they're processed very quickly. I went to the border. That was my first stop after taking this position because I really wanted to understand it.
Yeah.
I wanted to see it. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand all of the figures. I wanted to understand every law that was impacting these decisions being made. I wanted to understand where people were going and how they were getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And, there is no excuse for this. I mean, once you understand the dynamics, it looks intentional. And
it is,
in
my opinion.
Right.
There's no other explanation for it because it could have stopped immediately. And then instead, Biden has just continued to let them flood in. And I think we all know the reasons why. But in the meantime, I'm so upset because I'm okay, you're okay, but how about the majority of Americans, or at least
our most
many
vulnerable
millions
communities are the ones impacted.
Yes, completely.
And so, I really I'm trying to look at this as objectively as possible. I'm not looking at this through a political lens. I wanted to just understand fully the dynamics of it, especially on the crime rate, because that I've been working on for 9 years. And it's something I understand very, very well is the criminal justice system. So seeing these numbers in these cities didn't make sense to me. They didn't look like I often think in data, and I think in terms of modeling things through this lens of econometrics. And the two most impactful things on the crime rate by far are the lockdowning, lack of recovery from the lockdown, and the simultaneous influx of the migrant populations into these communities specifically. Those are the two greatest factors to our crime rate. So if we close the border, and if we, work on Bobby's plan to ameliorate the pressure on these communities, we give these communities a freaking break.
Yeah.
Right? They can take a breath. They're not competing for, these jobs and positions because some of these migrants are working. They are taking jobs.
Sure.
So we don't have a economic policy addressing the realities of what's going on in these communities. Closing the border is the most reasonable thing we can act on today. So I hope if, Mayorkas hears this, from somebody who's working in criminal justice reform, please close the border now. It's really, really important.
It's essential, and it's heartbreaking because of the domino effect of it. I think there's several layers here.
Yeah.
And the cities that you mentioned that we all know of that were decimated the most by the lockdowns, all had similar rules and regulations regarding COVID and the rules around the pandemic and the lockdown. And I remember, again, from a distance, because it was my favorite city, I'm like, wait, Gavin Newsom, what are we doing? What are we doing? And it was follow the science, and then it was not follow the science, and it was picking and choosing. And so San Francisco, we'll just focus on that, was decimated. But it was, to an extent, self-inflicted when it continued well beyond the scary part of maybe let's just say the first 9 months of COVID. I don't know the exact date, right? From there, and again, the videos are disturbing isn't even the right word. I just saw a video today that came out with Congressman Adam Schiff up in the Bay Area, and he got robbed, and he went to his event with a t-shirt on because they stole his bags out of his car. I mean, it's every day in many of these cities, in New York City, in San Francisco. And my question is, okay, yes, the numbers that you spoke about and with immigration and all these people filtering in, and a lack of accountability for the criminals. And when they're allowed to come in and just take a bag and let's just swipe it all in and steal. And when the toothpaste is now even locked up at a CVS, and CVS's and Walgreens and Nordstrom's and Bloomingdale's are all leaving town. Why, I guess is my question, and I mean this genuinely. Why is there so little accountability for these criminals who are no longer fearful? It is broad daylight, and it's
broad daylight,
constant. And now the businesses are like, peace out, San Francisco. We can't do this.
I think there's a general trend towards broad daylight, criminality, and we see it from all levels of society. I mean, let's be honest, right? So we see it at, the corporate, and the government levels, and we see it on the ground. I can speak from what I see, because, I'm in these communities. I work with community organizers. There has not been a program to help these communities get past the pandemic. And I know that I keep going back to that lockdown. We can definitely talk about accountability, but you have to understand that you put somebody who has committed petty theft in prison. They don't have money to actually afford good legal representation. So then the state then has to appoint legal representation. And that becomes a very expensive proposition if that person ends up becoming incarcerated, because of a pileup of offenses. That individual is then going to cost $75,000 to $100,000 a year to live in our criminal justice, in our carceral system. Taxpayers are paying for that. So if you remember Aristotle, and I know this is not a popular thing to continue to bring up, but Aristotle did say, the father of all crime is poverty. I didn't make that up. And it's been something that's been repeated throughout history as governments like ours, as civilizations like ours have endured high crime spikes. I believe in my bones that there are mechanisms to address poverty that impact crime rates. The number one things we have to look at are, for one, we've got to take illegal migrants out of because anytime you have illegal migrants within that calculation, it distorts the entire analysis. So if we take that, this is a big burden. I think that this is something that is not a bipartisan thing and we can all agree on. Yeah. We really have to take the pressure of the migrant population
but then again,
out of these communities.
You stop it today, you shut it down, but then they're already here. You're not going to, how does that change immediately in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, in New York?
Right. We do have to go through a process of if you're in this country illegally, you have to go, right? Our communities just cannot support them right this moment. And you do it with the promise of apply for immigration. You have to do it hand in hand.
Legally, just like everyone else.
Legally, like everybody else. But you have to do them